All right, so the common thread seems to be that the gaining of wisdom is a progressive kind of thing. That God doesn't just zap you with a lightning bolt and all of a sudden you're wise as Solomon. That's not even what happened with Solomon. It was a long process of, searching out and walking out the wisdom that he had learned in order to learn more wisdom. And I think that all wisdom is kind of in a continuum or a spectrum. There's no complete wise man, nobody out there who has total wisdom, and nobody who is a total unadulterated fool. Everybody has some kind of wisdom and some kind of foolishness still in them to be worked out. And it is a process of working it out. Lots of trial and error along the way. These first few verses, I think it's verses 1 through 8 that are kind of a block. I mean, it's really 1 through 4, and then 5 and 6 and 7 and 8. I think those are all kind of blocked together, but 1 through 8 is a kind of an entire thought, and it kind of describes this process, the progression of somebody who is willing to learn wisdom to somebody who has learned wisdom. And it begins with in verse 1, where the person, whoever Solomon is talking about here, he is listening. Let me pull up my scriptures, my Bible, so I can see it. It says, "If my son, if you receive my words." So that's really just reception. The son is willing to hear what father has to say. And then he says, treasure up my commandments or my instructions within you. So he begins with just being willing to listen, and then he's actually internalizing what has been told to him. So it's an active reception. And then in verse 2, making your ear attentive. So that's like not just hearing, but really paying attention, really trying to understand what's being told to you, inclining your heart to understanding. So not just trying to understand the words, but to really understand the intent and implant it inside of you, to internalize it. And then in verse 3, it goes to, if you call out for insight, it's like the son has been demonstrated a willingness to hear. And then he's really trying to hear it and understand it. And then increasing, like this sound, this flowed so much better in my head. Each one of these steps is, I think, more intensive. Hold on, I got somebody else to let in here. From passive listening to an active listening, a deliberate internalization of the commandments or the instructions, then making your ear attentive to wisdom. So not just hearing what is being said, but listening to what's behind being said, or looking for more things to hear rather than just what's being offered. And then inclining your heart to understanding. This is really trying to understand all of the sources of wisdom that are coming to you. And then in verse 3, calling out for insight, it's like asking for more, not just passively receiving anymore, but asking for more knowledge, more understanding. And then in the next part of verse 3, raise your voice for understanding. So first you kind of ask, and then it's like, no, more. And then in verse 4, you seek it like silver. And the Hebrew word for seek here, let me switch over to my concordance, bakash. And this is the same word used generally when somebody is just keeping an eye out for something. Like when Jacob sent Joseph out to find his brothers in the field, when Joseph is walking along the road, and this is the word that's used to describe what he's doing. He knows generally where the brothers are. He's not hunting for them. He's just walking along, looking around, like, I know they're around here somewhere. So it's an active search, but it's not intensive. And then finally, at the end of verse 4, search for it as for hidden treasure. And the word here for search is like turning over every stone, not going to rest until I find it. So the son has gone from being willing to hear to actively hearing, and then to internalizing, asking for more, demanding more, looking for more sources of wisdom along the road, until finally he is actively searching and hunting it down. And only after this does he then get understanding of the fear of Yahweh and find knowledge of God. This phrase, knowledge of God, is a little curious. I mean, in context, it's pretty clear what it means. Kind of. Is it knowledge of God, or is it God's knowledge, like the knowledge that belongs to God? And it's sort of both. It is knowledge that is given by God, just like you will never get true wisdom on your own. You can't go on a mountaintop and look inside of yourself to find wisdom. This only comes from God. But wisdom only comes from having a knowledge of God. And since God is incomprehensible, he is infinite, there is no way that you can really understand God unless he reveals himself. So it is both knowledge of God and knowledge of God, if that makes sense.